You've always believed the Titanic sank because of an iceberg, right? What if I told you that might be the biggest lie in modern maritime history? Get ready to question everything you've ever been told. Hidden photos, a secret fire, criminal decisions. The truth behind the Titanic's sinking was buried for over a century, until now. In this video, you'll uncover the dark secrets behind a tragedy that could have been avoided, but was silenced by pride, money, and ambition. If you think you already know this story, think again. Minute by minute, a new mystery unfolds, and what you discover could change how you see one of history's most iconic disasters. When the Titanic was introduced to the world, it was hailed as the greatest human creation ever to sail. A floating colossus, 882 feet long, like a 90-story building laid flat on water. Even the ship's own officers needed over 2 weeks just to learn their way around. Everything about it screamed unsinkable. But that very confidence was the first crack in the armor. Its funnels stood 82 feet tall and blasted out over 100 tons of soot daily. The ship cost $7.5 million to build, the equivalent of about $500 million today. Ironically, that's less than what it cost to make the 1997 Titanic film. Just think about that. A tragedy that cost less to happen than to recreate. Now, picture this. 3,000 workers, 26 months of non-stop labor, 6 days a week, scaling heights equivalent to a 20-story building, with no safety ropes. 8 men died, hundreds were injured, and all that effort went into building a ship that would only last 4 days at sea. But deep inside its steel belly, a hidden danger had already begun to smolder. Among the excitement of Titanic's departure, one photo held a clue no one noticed: a dark, 9-meter-long smudge on the ship's hull. It would take over 30 years for journalist and researcher Melanie Schumann to identify it. That smudge was evidence of a fire that had been burning for weeks inside the ship, weakening the steel structure without anyone on board realizing. Metallurgy experts later confirmed prolonged heat could reduce steel strength by up to 75%. That means the Titanic didn't hit the iceberg like a steel fortress. It hit as if it were made of brittle paper. The fire did the damage. The iceberg just finished the job. And the worst part? The ship's management knew. They were fully aware of the blaze before departure, but chose to set sail anyway. Why? One word: money. Coal miners were on strike, coal was scarce, and other ships were canceling their trips. But Titanic had tickets sold and a reputation to uphold. Postponing wasn't an option. So they rotated the ship at dock to hide the fire marks from view. Passengers boarded in awe, while below the surface, the real threat was already alive and burning. While the hull was quietly compromised, the inside of the Titanic was a palace. Inspired by London's Ritz Hotel, it offered first-class passengers pools, Turkish baths, a squash court, a gym, beauty salons, even a daily newspaper. Meals had 13 courses, each with its own wine, lasting up to 5 hours. It was floating decadence. They even had dog walkers and stylists on board. There were 20,000 bottles of beer, 1,500 bottles of wine, and 8,000 cigars. And yet, no binoculars. Yes, seriously, binoculars. The one tool that could have helped spot an iceberg in time was locked in a cabinet, and the only officer with the key had been reassigned last minute and forgot to hand it over. That oversight, seemingly small, proved fatal. The ship had already sailed, and the lookout crew had no way to see what lay ahead in the dark ocean. And even if they had, they were moving far too fast. Titanic was going full throttle. A decision driven not by caution, but by pride. And that pride would soon meet cold reality. Titanic wasn't cruising. It was racing. The ship was behind schedule, and the company wanted to make headlines. They needed the fastest crossing possible to impress the world. So, despite iceberg warnings, they pressed on, even increasing speed. They gambled with lives to protect a reputation. Even more shocking, the crew had canceled their only scheduled lifeboat drill that very morning. Nobody knew what to do in an emergency. And when disaster struck, panic took over. Lifeboats that could hold 65 people were launched with only 27 aboard, because passengers didn't believe the ship could sink. To make matters worse, Titanic didn't even carry enough lifeboats for all its passengers. The original design planned for 48 boats, but they reduced it to just 20, because too many boats would ruin the aesthetic. That decision cost over 1,000 lives, and when the iceberg hit, there was one last hope nearby. A ship that never came. As Titanic sent up flares, the SS Californian floated nearby. Yet, it never came to help. For decades, its captain was blamed for ignoring the distress signals. But recent studies suggest something no one expected. A rare light refraction phenomenon called thermal inversion might have prevented the flares from being seen at all. Thermal inversion happens when cold air hugs the ocean surface with warm air above it. This bends light unnaturally, hiding or distorting objects. Essentially, the flares may have looked like distant, harmless flashes, not a cry for help. Multiple ships that night reported similar visual anomalies. The sky itself betrayed the Titanic. This discovery reframes the narrative. The Californian may never have realized what was happening. It wasn't apathy, it was physics. The last chance for rescue was blocked not by distance or time, but by nature playing tricks with the light. But even that doesn't absolve the real culprit, the string of choices that led them there in the first place. For over 100 years, the iceberg story remained unchallenged. It was neat, clean, easy to digest. But slowly, old photos resurfaced, forgotten documents were found, and experts began connecting the dots. Why did the company hide the fire? Why reduce lifeboats? Why silence so many voices? What emerges is disturbing, a clear effort to protect reputations and avoid financial disaster. The ship was turned to hide damage, drills were canceled, messages ignored. This wasn't just a tragedy, it was a cover-up. A failure not of fate, but of foresight. Titanic wasn't a victim of nature. It was a victim of human choices. And the deeper researchers dig, the clearer it becomes. Titanic was doomed before it even left the shipyard. The tragedy was set in motion long before the iceberg came into view. And now, a century later, that truth is finally surfacing. The world has clung to the Titanic story as a grand, romantic epic. The ship that challenged nature and lost. But the truth is far less poetic. It's about ignored warnings, ego-driven decisions, and manipulated narratives. The real Titanic story is uglier, and far more important. Yes, the image of an iceberg tearing through a steel hull is powerful. It makes for great cinema. But it distracts us from the real horror. This didn't have to happen. The fire, the speed, the silence, the lies, all human choices. The Titanic didn't just sink. It was betrayed by the very people who claimed to protect it. Even today, many resist these new facts. It's more comfortable to believe the legend than face the inconvenient truth. But truth doesn't care about comfort. It keeps surfacing, piece by piece, demanding to be heard. And when it is, it changes everything. Over a century later, the Titanic still haunts our imagination. Not just as a shipwreck, but as a symbol. It's a mirror reflecting our arrogance, our shortcuts, our obsession with appearance over safety. It's not just about a boat that sank. It's about who we are when we think no one's watching. Even now, with advanced technology, new tragedies happen for old reasons. Rushed timelines, ignored warnings, overconfidence. That's why the Titanic matters. It reminds us that progress without humility is dangerous, and that even the strongest can break. Not because of force, but because of pride. So why are we so fascinated? Maybe because we see ourselves in that ship, in the way we overlook problems, delay decisions, hide weaknesses. The Titanic isn't just history. It's a warning, and that warning still echoes today. The Titanic shouldn't be remembered just for its size or its glamour. It should be remembered for every choice that went unchallenged, for every warning dismissed, for For every truth denied, the iceberg was just the trigger. The real collapse happened long before the collision. And those lessons are not just for shipbuilders or historians, they're for all of us. How many times do we ignore problems because it's not the right time? How often do we speed up when we should slow down? The Titanic shows what happens when priorities are built on illusion instead of integrity. Truthfully, the most dangerous thing about the Titanic wasn't the iceberg. It was the belief that it couldn't fail. That's the kind of thinking that sinks more than ships. It sinks dreams, businesses, and even civilizations. The Titanic was a marvel, but it was also a warning wrapped in steel. New evidence about the Titanic keeps emerging. Photos, artifacts, interviews. It's as if the ship still has something to say. And maybe it does. Because this story was never just about a ship. It was about decisions, pride, and the cost of silence. Every time a new piece of the puzzle is revealed, we get closer to justice. Not for headlines, but for truth. The Titanic reminds us that mistakes, when buried, grow heavier. But when exposed, they can teach, transform, and protect future generations. The Titanic didn't just sink once. It continues to sink every time we choose image over honesty, speed over safety, pride over preparation. And maybe, just maybe, that's why its story still refuses to die. So, do you still believe it was just an iceberg? Or has your view of this tragedy changed forever? The Titanic didn't just collide with ice, it collided with human nature. And that's a story still being written. Which of these facts surprised you the most? Had you ever heard of the fire theory? Do you believe more secrets remain at the bottom of the ocean? Let me know in the comments. Your opinion matters here. And if this video opened your eyes, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because we've got even more bizarre, mind-blowing truths coming your way. In fact, there's another video on screen right now that'll blow your mind just as much. Click it and keep diving into the unbelievable.